2026 is starting fast for AI developers. Anthropic dropped Opus 4.6. 15 minutes later, OpenAI dropped Codex 5.3. Now, you can spend a lot of time looking at the benchmarks, but one of the big things that I saw that really stood out for me on Opus is they now support a 1 million token context window. So that's huge. You can do a lot of work. You can give your agents a lot of information, understand your documentation, your code base, and everything so they can work autonomously. Alongside that Opus drop, there was something that I thought was really, really fascinating. Agent Teams. Now, Agent Teams provides the ability to create autonomous agents that spawn their own Claude Code instance. When you combine that with Opus 4.6 and that 1 million context token window, you can have agents working and collaborating as a team in their own context to build things truly autonomously. Combining those things together, I think, is a real game changer. I'm going to use Claude Code with inside VS Code. Everybody works differently. I prefer to use it inside VS Code, and I actually really like this sidebar that comes as part of the Claude Code VS Code plugin. But before we get started, because Agent Teams is still in experimental mode, you have to go into your .claude settings JSON and make sure you add this experimental flag. You'll see here I'm also setting my default model to Opus 4.6 because I want to take advantage of that bigger context window. Once you have that set up, you've restarted VS Code or however you want to work with Claude Code. Before we jump into the code and the prompt and agents, I always start in my Claude.md file. Now, there's a lot of information here. I'll go into it as we go through, but a few things that I want to define up front. Most importantly, what do I want to build? So in this instance, I'm going to build a weather app, and I'm going to call it Grumpy Weather. The idea is that it's a weather app with a bit of an attitude. So if you have a friend that maybe is not a morning person, that really you don't want to talk to them before they start to use the coffee, this is the type of app experience that I want to offer. Now, I've actually gone through, before I've even thought about creating a prompt, and defined the architecture that is important for me in my application. So I'm going to build a mobile application with Expo. I'm going to use Weather API to get the information. But because I'm building this for production, I want to be able to manage and support those APIs. And a great way to do that is inside Postman. So I'm going to use Postman collections to manage and support all of those APIs that I create. I want to make sure that I do QA testing. I want to make sure that all of my API keys and everything are stored securely. And what I'm really doing is defining the overall outline and architecture of any application that I'm building with inside my business, in this instance, Grumpy Weather. You'll see I've actually gone through and started to define individual aspects of my architecture. So this is where it's really important to start thinking in an engineering mindset. So there's a front end, a back end, QA testing, and each of these have explicit information. So if we look at the front end, so you'll see I've already told the mobile app is going to be using Expo because I want to support iOS and Android. I've given some instructions in terms of how the user interface should actually look. So I'm giving instructions to my agent to build. In this instance, I'm actually going to leverage Duolingo's color identity style guide, which is available on their website. Love Duolingo, but I also like that there's a style guide that I can reference to because I'm a developer, not a designer. Importantly here, I want to make sure that my front end only uses the Postman collections that are defined. It can't go off and create its own APIs or anything. I'm giving it clear instructions from an architectural guide. Now, next, on the back end, I want to again make sure that the APIs only come from Postman. I only want to use APIs that are available with inside the Postman's public API network. Now, this is a really key thing because there are so many API endpoints already defined in that Postman public API network. It should be able to go out and just find whatever services it needs, and I know that they're going to be successfully managed with inside Postman. I've told all of my collections need to be pushed to Postman. I've already defined a Postman workspace ID, and I'll come back to this one in just a little bit when we talk about MCP servers, but I have a workspace in Postman. I want to make sure my collections are managed inside there. And then finally, on the testing side of things, I want to do something which is pretty typical. I want my back end to be tested with Postman mock servers and test runners, but I also want my front end to be tested with Playwright, which is a great tool for testing front end development. And then finally, this is where things are really important to set up before you even start coding. I want to give my agent all of the tools that it needs to be able to do the job correctly. And those tools these days are generally MCP servers. So if you have a look here, I've defined 4 MCP servers that I want it to use. The Postman MCP server for working obviously with Postman, the brand new Postman MCP documentation server, so it always has the most up-to-date Postman documentation, Playwright, which is again for testing that front end, and also I really like to use Context 7, which is an MCP server that provides the latest developer documentations in general. Once I have all of these things together, I'm ready to configure my environment just a little bit more. And the first thing that I want to do is make sure that these MCP servers are defined and available. So you'll see here, I'm inside my .mcp JSON, which is the file within inside my project, and I've defined those 4 servers. Before you get started, I highly recommend making sure that all of these MCP servers are there and available, and you've also used that CLAUDE.md file to define which servers should be available to your agent. We now have quite a comprehensive understanding of the application that we want to build, target audience, architecture, and tools that are available. Don't skip on this step. You have to spend some time to make sure that your CLAUDE.md is correct before you even look at agent teams or any other coding aspects. Make sure your CLAUDE.md is well defined, and you can reuse this for every single project going forward. Let's start with our initial prompt. So you'll see here I'm building a mobile app that provides accurate weather forecast delivered with an attitude, information that we provided before already. But here's where it gets really interesting. I'm giving an instruction to say create an agent team to build and prepare this app for launch. So remember, I'm thinking of an application that's going to production. So I want to make sure that I have one teammate who's responsible for creating the mobile app. That's that front-end development that we defined in CLAUDE.md. A teammate that's responsible for back-end APIs to retrieve the weather. They're the one that's going to be using Postman collections. And then also a teammate who's the QA tester to ensure the app works with no errors or navigation. And I've also added another teammate here as well that is a marketer. They're writing a press release and information to bring it to market. Now, I mentioned before that I have a side project that I'm working on. One of the hard things that I find is doing all of the marketing and making sure that it is available. When you start to think of agent teams, think beyond just code, but think about what else can be automated within your process. Marketing is a great example on this. Now, I always like to say, ensure you rely on the CLAUDE.md for detailed instructions on architecture and audience. It should pick everything up already. I just like to be very explicit on this point. So with that information, I'm going to kick it off. What's going to happen here is Claude is going to see that agent teams required, and it's going to actually start to spin up individual team members in individual instances of Claude. Already knows through the guidance that I have information and API keys with inside the environment. It's going to go and start creating these teams. Now, this is fascinating. I am incredibly impressed at the way this is set up. There ends up being team members, but an orchestrator in the front. And that is effectively your team lead or your project manager that keeps communicating back and forth with each of these individual instances. So you can see the to-do list here as it's already gone and created a team and spawned those 4 teams. It's going ahead to create that mobile application developer right now. It knows my architectural rules are coming from the CLAUDE.md. Again, I really like to be very explicit on this one because I've seen sometimes my agents and my teams don't quite follow the instructions. When you're explicit, it makes it much easier and much more confident. Already see on the left-hand side here, it's starting to create the applications and requirements for the weather application. So that's that front end dev. We can see our marketing specialist has already been spun up here as well. QA testers up and working now, and the team's up and running. Okay, our marketer is already done. The first deliverable is already created. Let's go and have a look at that press release while the rest of our agents are busy building. It's gone through and created a really nice marketing release. It's used instructions inside the CLAUDE.md for the vibe and the audience that I was looking for. Created a pretty good approach. You'll also see on the side here, our backend agent has started working. It's working on a backend service inside Postman. It's got an API collection that it's working on. It's collected the weather API from Postman and the public API network. Everybody is building away quite well. Okay, so at this point, our API developer is done. The collections environments have all been created inside Postman. API dev is now collaborating with the QA tester. So if you remember, one of the things that we said with the QA tester is we wanted to make sure that that tester used Postman mock servers for the testing environment, and then in production we can use the real APIs and endpoints as well. It's a great way to develop and make sure you tap into something like a CI/CD process. Let's have a look and make sure that everything looks good. Yes, that's looking great from an API collection. I want to make sure that that is pushed into Postman and managed correctly. Mobile dev is still riding away. I can see that it's very quickly building an app and a service for me. It has Playwright inside here, so I know it's doing what I asked it to do. And it looks like the mobile app says it's done. Now it's time for the QA tester to start their job. So you'll see here, this is the amazing thing with agent teams. We have that lead agent that is actually collaborating and sending messages to each of the sub-agents. So it knew that the mobile dev was completed and told the QA tester to start their work. So our agent has finished everything that it needs. I'm inside Postman in my workspace here, and I can see that I've got a Grumpy Weather API endpoint. It's gone and collected everything from Weather API, pulled everything from the public API network. I'm using the free tier. This looks great. I already have my API key, but everything is defined and created here, so I can very easily manage it. Got nice little mood categories here. That's kind of cool. If I have a look inside here, my API endpoints have been created. So get current weather. These are all taken from the public API network. These look great to me. But because we were creating everything in production as well, I asked the agent to make sure that it created test scripts. So if I just click into one of these test scripts here, you can see I've got tests for 400s, looking for other endpoints and tests, make sure that locations work. Everything is inside here as planned and is expected. This looks pretty impressive. Now I know that these are going to function correctly because they're created and managed with inside Postman, and we created all of those test cases. So our QA tester agent as part of that team can do its job. Now if we go over and have a look at our environment inside here as well, we have environments set up just as defined. We have our weather API, we have development, we have our mock servers, so it knows exactly what it needs to test. And I think at that point, we are ready to go start testing our application. Now let's bring up our app. Here it is. I think it could use a little bit of design work, but if I have a look at the Duolingo style guide, it's matching the style guide and doing exactly what I asked it to do. Let's go and test it. Let's say the city is San Francisco. Well, that works. It's kind of cold. It's about 2:30 in the morning here, so not surprising. But I like the attitude that's coming out. It's foggy out there. Drive safe or stay home. Staying home is always an option. Let's check out my hometown, Melbourne, Australia. Make sure everything is working. Weather's a little bit nicer there, that's for sure. Sunny and clear skies, annoyingly cheerful. This is looking great. Now, if I look at it in a mobile app perspective, we should be able to see a nice little responsive design here as well. Let's put it onto iPhone 7. It's looking pretty good. I can click on the forecast, 3-day forecast. Let's go back to San Francisco. This is looking pretty good. All created with inside my team. So as we were running our tests inside the UI, our agent team has already done the same thing. And there we have it. Our Grumpy Weather application is complete using Postman, Opus 4.6, and the new agent teams functionality. This is a game changer for development, and especially when you're building in production and you start the right way with the right context in your CLAUDE.md. I'll see you on the next one.